today? Yes.
Chuck's here. Chuck and Grady.
Yeah, this part where that white mug is where he's sitting.
Okay, because if he's here, we have for him. If he's not here, then we don't.
Let me see if I can round this.
Yeah, thank you. He was here for the RPO meeting anyway, and that's
Seeing him toward those arches across the driveway.
Sorry. We'll wait just a second.
Brandon Rogers just.
Yes, thank you, Brandon. You helped make me know.
Hello, Brandon.
Yes. I appreciate everybody coming today. So we have quite a bit on our agenda, but I'm going to push hard because we have one topic that I think we need to get to that hopefully have lots of discussion, but people that have to speak on it have to other obligations later, so I want to try to push if you don't mind. Next, I'll read the ethics statement. In accordance with the State Government Ethics Act, it is the duty of every board member to avoid conflicts of interest. Does any board member have any known conflicts of interest with respect to matters coming before the board today? If so, please identify the conflict for the record and refrain from any participation in particular matter involved. Do we have any conflicts today? None, we'll move on. Do we have public comment, Anna?
Yes, we do.
Perfect. Now, with public comment, you're allowed 3 minutes. I'm not going to gavel you out at 3 minutes if you go over. I'm kind of lenient. However, if you go extremely over, I will. I'm telling you.
Give you 10% grace.
We'll give you a 10% grace.
So the first person signed up for public comment is Barbara Collette.
Okay. Also, we have a public hearing later if you want to speak at the public hearing as well.
So yeah, the public comment is for generally all the items. Specifically for the Metropolitan Transportation Plan item, we do have a public hearing.
So you can decide which one you want to speak at. Would you just state your name?
My name is Barbara Collette, and I live on Elk Mountain Road, and I hope that you guys will fund the proposal about having sidewalks on our road. I've lived there for 20 years, and it's been more traffic, and they speed up and down the road, and we have more people living on our road. More children are living there, and it's just, and I've recently got T-boned because where I live, it's a blind curve. Mostly on all that road is blind, and it's a skinny road. So hopefully you guys will fund it, and plus we have a bicycle, 100-mile bike ride that goes through that road. There's always people trying to get to the plastics plant for jobs, and there's no sidewalk or anything, and people usually have to jump in the woods to keep from getting hit. And we would really appreciate you guys considering our road for that.
Thank you so much. Next.
Next is Robert Harmon.
Hi, my name is Robert Harmon. I am the owner of Elk Mountain Motors on Elkwood Avenue, and it's right at the blind curve there and near the top of the hill by the water plant. And I can tell you, I've owned this business now for 5 years, and we have had so many close calls pulling in and out of our parking lot. I would like to see the speed limit lowered again. I think it's 30 at the top and 35 at the bottom. I would propose that it should probably be 25 for the whole road. It's a residential street, as our neighbors here have mentioned. There are more and more young families moving there. There are dogs and cats and children, and a sidewalk would be a tremendous help. Is there happen to be anybody here from the IPEX plastics plant? Any representatives from them? No? So, you know, they're a big employer in the area, and IPEX has a couple things. One, they have employees that walk to and from work, and a sidewalk would be very beneficial to them, as well as the trying to lower the speed on that road. And they also have a lot of employees that use that as a cut-through to work. And I can tell you that I opened my business at about 8 o'clock in the morning. And when everybody, you know, between 8 and 8:30, when everybody's kind of rushing to get to work at IPEX, there are some pretty excessive speeding going on that road. We hear tires squealing and, you know, cars exceeding 50 miles an hour, and then they get on the gas and you can hear them. As far as you can hear them, they're wide open throttle down that hill. And probably by the time they get to your area, it's probably pretty scary. So we've had, like I said, we've had a lot of close calls. We haven't had an accident yet, but backing in and out of my shop is scary, and it doesn't have to be. And I think it would be great if the city could do something about that. I also was asked by a neighbor, Uda Bronstadler, I may have butchered that name, but pretty close. She asked me to read something on her behalf that she wrote, so I'm going to do that now. So Uda says, I have lived on Elkwood Avenue for the past 21 years. During this time, traffic has dramatically increased, as have vehicle speeds. Many of the motorists and some pedestrians that travel down our narrow road are IPEX employees, which is why I am writing to you. Elkwood Avenue has no shoulder to speak of and no sidewalks. The speed limit is 30 miles per hour and 20 miles per hour just north of our hidden driveway. But most cars fly by at higher speeds, making leaving or returning from our driveways extremely dangerous. In fact, we were T-boned by an oncoming vehicle just a few weeks ago. Elkwood Avenue has been selected by the MPO as a sidewalk corridor from Riverside Drive all the way to Merriman Avenue. However, this project has not yet been funded. As Woodfin's largest employer, IPEX is a major stakeholder in this matter. I hope that representatives of IPEX would consider speaking or at least attending as an alternative. You can email Tristan, well, the rest of that is kind of irrelevant. It appears the intent of that letter was really written, the audience was written to someone at IPEX. But I think the message that it was trying to get across to the group is this road is, you know, kind of a boiling kettle, and we don't want to see it boil over and have a fatality there. So as the, you know, one of the business owners on that road and a car guy myself who, you know, I own sports cars, I like to drive fast, but there's a place for that. There are racetracks, there are empty roads out in the backcountry. City streets is not for that, so.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for your time.
Next is Joyce Roberts.
Good afternoon. I'm Joyce Roberts. My grandmother bought the house that we live in on Elkwood Avenue in 1962. So I've seen a lot of changes in our community. There used to be a sidewalk that went all the way from Woodson School to Riverside Drive. It came down Elk Mountain Road and down Elkwood Avenue. You could walk all the way from Woodson School to Riverside Drive. And after the 4-lane was built, it made a lot of changes. The sidewalk was not paved, it was just pea gravel. There was a curb that kept the gravel out of the street and in the sidewalk where it should be. And now there is nothing. The curb's been paved over. There's nothing but weeds there. And there is no place for anybody to walk. There are numerous bicycles that go up and down that street. Why, I don't know, because you've got those big flatbed trucks from IPEX hauling pipe up and down. And they do not go down through there at a reasonable speed. Neither does anyone else. We desperately need this sidewalk before there is a tragedy. And I appreciate your time. Please consider our community for this sidewalk. Thank you.
And Lugos Zoeva.
Oh, I'm sorry, I think I signed up on their own, finance sheet, I didn't make a public
You're going to
comment.
do the public hearing as well?
That's it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Next, we'll go to the approval of the agenda and consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Second. We have a second from Mr. McAllister.
All right. Asheville, Kimroni.
Aye.
DOT Division 13, Billy Clark.
Aye.
DOT Division 14, Chuck McGrady.
Aye.
Buncombe County, Drew Ball.
Aye.
Buncombe County, Parker Sloan.
Aye.
Canton, Dr. Ralph Hamlet.
Aye.
Flat Rock, Emily Whitmire. Fletcher, Jim Flair.
Aye.
Haywood County, Brandon Rogers. Haywood County, Kevin Ensley.
Aye.
Hendersonville, Jennifer Hensley.
Aye.
Laurel Park, George Banta. Madison County, Matt Wetzel.
Aye.
Montreat, Tom Widmer.
Aye.
Town of Biltmore Forest, Drew Stevens.
Aye.
Waynesville, Anthony Sutton.
Aye.
Weaverville, Catherine Cordell.
Aye.
And Woodfin, Jim Callister.
Aye.
The ayes have it.
Perfect, thank you. Next, we're going to have a public hearing on the adoption of the Elevate 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan. Let's open the public hearing.
Yeah, it's open.
I'll have a motion to open the public hearing. So moved. Second?
Second.
Thank you. Let's do another roll call.
Asheville, Kimroni.
Aye.
DOT Division 13, Billy Clark.
Aye.
Excuse me, point of order, we're voting to have a public hearing?
Yeah, you have to open the public hearing.
We have to vote to do that?
The public hearing.
That's my understanding,
You
yeah.
can't just schedule a public hearing?
So you can schedule a public hearing, but you also have to have someone open the public hearing.
Okay, very different.
Close.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you, appreciate it.
Sorry, DOT Division 13, Billy Clark.
Aye.
DOT Division 14, Chuck McGrady.
Aye.
Buncombe County, Drew Ball. Buncombe County, Parker Sloan.
Aye.
Canton, Dr. Ralph Hamlet.
Aye.
Flat Rock, Emily Whitmire.
Aye.
Fletcher, Jim Flair.
Aye.
Haywood County, Brandon Rogers.
Aye.
Haywood County, Kevin Ensley.
Aye.
Hendersonville, Jennifer Hensley.
Aye.
Laurel Park, George Banta.
Aye.
Madison County, Matt Wetzel.
Aye.
Montreat, Tom Widmer.
Aye.
Biltmore Forest, Drew Stevens.
Aye.
Waynesville, Anthony Sutton.
Aye.
Weaverville, Catherine Cordell.
Aye.
And Woodfin, Jim Callister.
Aye.
The ayes have it.
Perfect. So we've opened the public hearing. Do we have anyone that wants to make public comment?
If anyone online would like to make public comment, please, make note in the chat.
That being said, I will entertain a motion to close public comment. So moved. Thank you.
Second.
Being that there was no public comment, I will consider closing the public comment without roll call unless anyone has an objection to closing public comment. Does anyone have any objection? Thank you. We'll close public comment. Moving on to the next point of business is the adoption of the Elevate 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan.
All right, so this is something that has been on several of our board agendas. It's been worked on for over a year and a half. It is the federally required 25-year plan for the region, also known as the Elevate 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan. So the MPO hired McAdams, led by Joel Strickland and their team, to take on the Metropolitan Transportation Plan work. This covered a whole lot. So just as a reminder, something we folded into this plan was updating the comprehensive transportation plan. That plan is, going on 18, well, it's over 18 years old. I'm getting ready for college. It should be in college. That plan, was updated, and, I would like to thank, a lot of the folks in this room, as well as local government staff for, providing comments and input, on a lot of the things, in both sections of the plan. So one thing you'll notice in the appendix of Elevate 2050 is a list of the unfunded plans. That's also the comprehensive transportation plan. All in all, I think with this plan and this planning effort, there's a lot of things to note, and Joel will go over the plan in general. With our socioeconomic projections that we did through 2050, we are anticipating continued growth in this region. But one thing that we found is that growth projections are starting to tick down for our region. When we did this plan 5 years ago, we were looking at over 190,000 new residents across the 5-county region. We're now looking at about a 20 to 25% reduction in that amount of growth. So while we're still thinking about growth, there's less that's being projected for our region. And I'll note that those projections came from before Hurricane Helene. I think that's one thing, you know, especially considering how much we talk about growth here and across our region. I think that's an important thing to note. Another theme that I think Joel is planning on touching on is that all in all with this plan, you know, we're still talking about, in general, the same amount of funding being available. We're just talking about that funding being able to accomplish less. And so, especially considering the needs, considering things like the safety plan that we recently passed that pointed out more and greater needs across the region, I think being cognizant of the fact that our funding is staying the same as it was and is going less far is an important thing to think about. I think that has a lot of, it does and should have a lot of repercussions on a whole lot of things. So for instance, I know we got a few comments that were like, why are you making all these changes from the last plan? Just put in all of Sweeten Creek. Well, if we put all of Sweeten Creek in the plan, that's it for our regional impact project. That project is now, the cost of it is so great that it would essentially gobble up 25 years worth of regional funding. Just to note, with this plan, there are some changes from the last plan that I think are really important, and I'll stop talking. Joel, please take it away.
Thank you, Tristan, and thanks everyone for letting me be here with you today. Those of you that haven't seen or heard from me throughout this process, I am Joel Strickland with McAdam. Luba Zueva is also here with me today. She's from VHB, and they were on our team helping with this process also. But as Tristan mentioned, we're here at the end of the planning process now. We're really excited to be finishing this project up with you all. As Tristan mentioned, it's been about a 1.5 year process for us, and we're glad to be back with you today to present the final presentation on it. And a lot of this information you will have seen, so I'm gonna, and I know you have a lot on the agenda today, so I'm gonna try to go fairly quickly. But I did want to provide you with some updates on what we've done. And let's see if I can share my screen with you. Here we go. All right. So some of the things I want to run through with you quickly today. We'll talk briefly about the importance of the MPP, which Tristan hit on, some of the key elements. Some of the changes from the previous plan to this one, a little bit about the CTP, as Tristan mentioned, which is a part of this plan, also in the appendix, and then the actions that we need to take today. Obviously, the MPP is an incredibly important document for the MPO. It isn't a requirement, a federally mandated requirement. that the MPO has to embark on. It describes the vision for the region, develops policies, operational strategies, and projects to achieve that vision. It also provides a blueprint for identifying future transportation needs, and how the region will plan to target those transportation needs through the future investments. The plan is required to cover 20 years at a minimum. This one covers basically 25. That's why it's the 2050 Elevate plan. And then some other things. Obviously, it reflects a great deal of public involvement that went on throughout the process. It identifies how to operate a multimodal network. So, obviously, this is much larger than just a highway plan. This is all modes of transportation. The plan does have to be fiscally constrained, and this plan will be updated, or is required to be updated every 4 to 5 years. I won't spend too much time on this slide, but just a little bit about how this plan fits into the grand scheme of the planning process and the process of how a project actually becomes a project and makes it to construction. The CTP, as Tristan mentioned earlier, is the Comprehensive Transportation Plan. It is a 30-plus year document that does not require fiscal constraints. So you can put basically any type of any amount of projects in there that you want to that have been identified because there's no future funding mechanism to constrain those. However, with the MCP, obviously, we're looking at a 25 to 30-year horizon, and it is required to be fiscally constrained. So you're limited on the amount of projects that you can put in the MCP, really based on your projected revenue over that 25-year time frame. The MCP is designed to be an area or a document where you can grab projects, hopefully, and put them through the prioritization process. So, we're kind of funneling down from the CTP, which is a huge list of projects, down to the MTP, which funnels it a little bit more. And then, as you'll discuss later with your spot prioritization process, you'll be pulling projects, hopefully, from the MTP to move forward through spot, and then with the ultimate goal of getting them included into the STIP and then getting them to construction. Just some of the key elements of this plan, and I won't spend a lot of time on this, but obviously the federally required planning factors are extremely important. We have a subsection in the plan where we kind of lay out what those planning factors are, and then you'll see throughout the plan, we actually show how they are addressed and where they are addressed. Obviously, it lays out vision, goals, and objectives, kind of as I mentioned earlier. Tristan mentioned some of the population trends. There's a lot of information in here about regional trends in the area, including existing conditions. We took a good look at that. What's existing, what's planned, or what do we need to have for the future based on these existing conditions. Then obviously public involvement, a key part again, and the plan lays that out. Then we get into modal and policy program recommendations, which actually starts looking at where those investments are kind of going and how we get to those investments. The financial plan is included, which really looks at the amount of money that would be projected for the region over the upcoming 25-year time frame and how that was projected. And then that funnels down to the fiscally constrained project list, which are included in the document. As Tristan mentioned, the CTP and the post-2050, anything for beyond this plan is included in the appendices, including the unfunded project list, which again makes up that comprehensive transportation plan. Real quickly, a little bit, since you're going through the prioritization process now, also a little bit about Elevate 2050, the MCP, and your prioritization process that you're doing with the state. Most of the projects that you'll be moving forward will likely come from your MCP, but that's not always the case. The divisions have the option to prioritize projects and submit projects also, so they may pick some projects that aren't necessarily in the MCP. Also, you use a different prioritization process for your STI projects. The process that we use for the MCP is very similar, but it's not exactly the same. So the two prioritization processes sometimes lead to a little bit different results in what you move forward. And then just something to keep in mind, if a project moves forward that isn't currently in the MCP, or if you find that you have projects in the future that need to be prioritized, you can always go back and do an MTP amendment to add those projects to the list if need be. Funding is expected to continue to be a challenge, obviously. I know Tristan's talked to you a lot about this, and you'll hear more about it in the prioritization section. And we try to reflect that in this plan. And, you know, again, moving projects forward and trying to get projects obviously will be a challenge, but it is something worthwhile that obviously you want to use this plan for to try to prioritize your projects moving forward. The Elevate 2050 financial plan, you all have seen this and you helped us approve this process, but just a little bit again about how we develop these assumptions. It assumes that the current distribution of transportation funds will continue, and that kind of lines up with NCDOT's spot prioritization assumptions. We didn't make any assumptions about any major changes in legislation at this point, nor did we add any new funding sources. We didn't add any increases in funding programs unless it can be reasonably assumed based on current bills and local planning. We do have a 5% inflation factor included. That is kind of compounded for the first 5 years of the midterm, and then it's held constant beyond that. That goes in line with the way the NCDOT does their STIP, and that's the reason we really decided to go that route there. And then something else to note kind of in line with that, and part of the reasoning for that, the project costs in the MTP are all in 2025 dollars. We did not adjust project costs for the future, and that way it would be easier to plan those projects out with the fiscally constrained method of backing inflation out. You all have seen this previously when I presented to you, but again, just a little bit of information about how the fiscal constraints ended up looking. Again, your actual dollar amounts will probably be more than this in future years, but this is, again, backing out inflation costs. But you can see we broke it out through the different prioritization tiers and also through some of the modes, but just wanted to share that with you again. And something else to keep in mind, the fiscal year 26 through 35 projects are the projects that are currently within the STIP. Those align well, so that's really what's accounting for that 26 to 35 time frame. Just real briefly, a little bit about what was different from your last MTP to this MTP in the terms of revenue and projections. Really, your projections for revenue are very similar to what they were with the last MTP. However, the big difference here is that we weren't able to constrain as many projects as you were able to do 5 years ago, and the main reason for that is just cost increases in projects. You know, one thing we tried to do early on in this process was start looking at, you know, the projects that you had, where those cost estimates were coming from, how old they were, and, you know, we found from 5 years ago with the previous MTP, there had been drastic cost differences between that 5-year window, and even projects that were submitted to prioritization 2 years ago also now have pretty substantial cost increases. So while the revenue projections weren't very different, the amount of projects that we were able to constrain are less than previous. Just real briefly here, and I won't take a lot of time on this slide, but we do have projects obviously broken out through the modes. 24 roadway projects are programmed, 41 bike and ped projects, and then we have a rail project, which is the rail crossing on Riverside Drive. And real quick, just wanted to mention, I met with you last month in talking about the changes to the plan, but just wanted to cover those again briefly. We did add some additional text after the public comment window closed. Also added the Appendix G, which gave a little bit more information on the model output, and it gave a summary of that. All of the comments that we received during the public comment period are also included in the appendix under Appendix H, and we addressed some of those comments. And then Appendix I is a place for plan revisions moving forward. Again, some of the additional text that was added, just to go through this quickly, and I shared this with you last month as well, but we did include some more information on hot lanes, and I know you are going to talk more about that this morning. We included some more information on electric vehicle infrastructure, what's existing and what may be needed for the future. We talked a little bit more about environmental mitigation activities, also added some additional information about transit, about what's currently ongoing and what's being done with funding. We did revise some project descriptions really to add greater cross-section details. Two reasons for that. One was to help the MPO out as they try to move projects forward, to have a better definitive look at what those projects should look like, and then also to help with modeling in the future. So when you plug projects into the model, you would have that level of detail. Also, with our timeline being very similar with the new STIP, we did include the latest version of the STIP as that 26 through 35 time frame. We also included some of the highest priorities, Swannanoa sidewalk projects, and then there were a few bike and ped projects that we were able to add in also based on some funding. So as Tristan mentioned, obviously today the big item is the MCP, and we're looking for approval of that, but we also have the CTP as the appendix to this, which is, as Daniel and Tristan mentioned, is 18 years old. NCDOT was a big help in helping us through this process to make sure that CTP also kind of meets their standards. And again, just to remind you that the CTP, again, it does not have to be fiscally constrained, so there's a number of projects in there and projects that, you know, over time you can move forward into the MCP. Just briefly here, I won't go through all of this, but you can see the project maps here on the right. We have specific project maps for all the recommendations for the CTP. They're very similar to the style that NCDOT uses, and we wanted to make sure of that, so we worked with them on that. But we have a number of highway recommendations, and we have a number of inset maps where you can see those in greater detail for all the municipalities and all the localities. Bike ped, same thing. You can see the bike ped map here, and you can see all of the bike ped projects. We've got 66 bike projects, 72 ped projects, 73 bike and ped projects, and 88 multi-use path projects. So there's a great number of those included here. Also, public transit and rail recommendations are also included in the CTP. So we wanted to make sure that we included everything that needed to be addressed in the CTP in that appendix portion of the document. And then obviously just a little bit of a recap of what's happened over the last couple of months and has brought us to today to adopting the MCP. We wrapped up public comment in August. As I mentioned earlier, all of the comments were included in the final version of this plan. They're in the appendix and addressed in the appendix of the document. We met with the prioritization subcommittee on September 3rd for their recommendation of moving this MCP along and recommendation of approval. And just a reminder, the prioritization subcommittee has been a huge help throughout this process. They have really helped guide this process, guide this document, and really help us in developing that vision and making sure the plan met the vision throughout. So we're really appreciative to the prioritization subcommittee and their efforts. We brought it through the TCC last week on September 11th, and obviously they recommended approval on that date. And then we're here with you all today on September 18th, also hopefully looking for approval of the plan. So again, I appreciate everyone's effort through this. The prioritization subcommittee has been great as a guide and a great resource for us throughout this process. The MPO staff should be commended for all of their help and all of their advisement throughout this process as well. But we're really fortunate and really glad to be moving this forward and to be presenting it to you today. And if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer those.
Thank you so much for all the work. It's been like years of work. Just for a point of clarity, one of the members wanted to know the projection for population has decreased. Do you know why the state would say that the population is going to decrease? from the model? I know it was, I forget the amount it was supposed to increase it. What changed there?
I can take that one. That was part of the socioeconomic projection study, which provides information that feeds into the MTP. My understanding is, in general, the state sonographer looks at a lot of recent population trends. And it's not that our population is set to decrease, it's more that our rate of growth is starting to slow. And
we were at 10% at one point, I believe.
That sounds about right.
It was substantial, so it's going to slow. It's decrease.
Right, and to be clear, I mean, we're still talking about well over 100,000 new residents across the 5-county area over the next 25 years. That's not a small number of people. But it is less than the 190,000 that we projected 5 years ago.
Another comment popped up, but anyone else have any questions?
I've got
Yes.
a couple questions. I guess I'm just trying to understand what the components of the plan are in its entirety. The French Broad MPO website has some links and maps to the plan, but it doesn't appear to link to the full plan. It links to a 2045 MTP, but not this plan. So I'm hoping to read the plan and really the appendices before I voted on it. But
it's Parker, the link is in the agenda packet, as well as if you go on our website and go under plans, there's a tab for Elevate 2050. From there's two separate links. There's the Elevate 2050 full plan, that's the MTP itself, and then there's a separate link for the appendices. We had to split them up because it's a whole lot of documents that our website, it's too much for our website to take as one. But on the Elevate 2050 webpage are the links to all of the information in the plan.
I put it in the chat.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Now, we need to vote on two separate items today, is that correct? Or one item to include Appendix G?
Just one, with it being an appendix, it is just adopting the MTP, and the CTP is an appendix as part of that.
I'll make the motion, Mr. Chair, that we adopt the MTP 2050.
Thank you. Do you have a second?
I would second.
Oh, thank you.
All right. Kim has her hand raised before we.
Yes, Councilmember Roney?
Thank you so much. So I've had been directing residents across Western North Carolina to participate in the in-person community engagement sessions around this. Can y'all remind us about how many people participated and maybe what some of their top concerns or curiosities were?
Absolutely. That's a very good question, Kim. Thank you.
Yeah, so obviously throughout the process, we had 4 different sets of public meetings or public engagement opportunities. We did do several in-house public meetings that were just, your standard walk-in type meetings. But we did also go out right before Christmas. I don't remember the name of the event now, Tristan, but we also went out right before Christmas and passed out a lot of information, encouraging people to take the survey and get involved and keep up with the plan. So, in all, I think for in-person engagement at public meetings, when we total everything up, we ended up with somewhere between 200, 250 total folks between the 4 meetings, or the 4 sets of public engagement where people actually walked into public meetings. But, with the survey and such, I think we ended up with the most recent survey, we ended up with over 500 participants. So, there was a good bit of engagement throughout the process. The biggest thing I think we heard a lot about active transportation, about bike ped routes, about greenways and those types of projects. We also heard a good bit about public transportation, and we tried to address those as well. But again, I think the biggest thing we heard was really on more of the active transportation side and doing as much as we could, or working with the MPO to do as much with this planning effort as we could moving forward, really prioritizing a lot of the bike and ped opportunities that you had in the area.
Yeah, Joel, can you bring up I think you had a financial plan?
Yeah.
Sheet. So one thing to note is, based on that comment and the input from the subcommittee, you'll notice that with the division funding, we're looking at 90% of that go to highway and 10% go to bike ped. That's essentially the maximum amount that we can really accomplish, and it's considerably more than we are currently accomplishing in terms of how much funding from prioritization is going towards bike ped projects. So just to point out, with this MCP, we are projecting that improves, that we pull down more funding through prioritization for bike ped than we have been in the past.
Thank you. That is so helpful because actually the number one concern I hear is safety for all modes of transportation. No matter how people are getting where they're going, we want them to get to their destination safely. And so I imagine when it comes down to the infrastructure, folks are pointing in that direction. Where are the decision-making points on how to shift that percentage so that 10% isn't the max option that we have ability to point in that direction?
Sure, yeah, I mean, so first with safety, a lot of the projects that are in the fiscally constrained list, both highway or otherwise, we looked at the plan that was adopted last month, the Safe Streets for Western North Carolina. That laid out priority safety corridors and intersections. And so the vast majority of the projects that are on the fiscally constrained list also overlap with a lot of those safety priority areas. So that's one thing. The other thing with the kind of the 90-10%, if I'm getting this question right, that's general policy from the department. So in the prioritization process, a minimum of 90% of funding is required to go to highway projects. A minimum of 6% is required to go to non-highway projects. And to note, that is more than just bike ped. And the remaining 4% is an open competition. So that is the existing policy. It has shifted recently. It was previously a minimum of 4% going to bike ped. 2 years ago, the work group and the Board of Transportation approved shifting that to a minimum of 6%. But in general, the minimum of 90% going to highway projects has remained roughly a constant since prioritization started, from my understanding.
That really helps inform my next action, which is I would like to move, or I guess do we already have a motion and a second on the table?
We have a motion and a second.
Okay, I would make a friendly amendment to include that we add a note that we would like to see a shift in a greater percentage being allowable for bike and pedestrian infrastructure to help meet our safety goals.
I'll make a second.
Oh, okay. So we have a motion to agree to it. Yeah, I'll agree to the amendment. Yep. Yep. So the first and 2 seconds, do they agree?
That was Parker Sloan, I believe.
I think Dr. Hamlin, you also agree? Okay. So we have a motion and a second, and also to include the statement from Councilmember Brody. Is there any other comments before we go on? Roll call.
All right, Asheville, Kim Rooney.
Aye.
Asheville, Sage Turner.
Aye.
DOT Division 13, Billy Clark.
Aye.
DOT Division 14, John Grady.
Aye.
Buncombe County, Drew Ball.
Aye.
Buncombe County, Parker Sloan.
Aye.
Canton, Dr. Ross Hamlet.
Aye.
Flat Rock, Emily Whitmire. Fletcher, Jim Clare. Haywood County, Brandon Rogers.
Aye.
Haywood County, Kevin Ensley.
Aye.
Hendersonville, Jennifer Hensley.
Aye.
Laurel Park, George Vanta.
Aye.
Madison County, Matt Wechsel. Montreat, Tom Widmer.
Aye.
Biltmore Forest, Drew Stevens.
Aye.
Waynesville, Anthony Sutton.
Aye.
Weaverville, Catherine Cordell.
Aye.
And Woodson, Jim Calister.
Aye.
The ayes have it.
Thank you, and I'd like to say that our Vice Chair, Jennifer Hensley, would like to make a statement about the process as well.
I just wanted to say thank you to the consultants. This is a lot of work, and you all made a very robust public engagement. And I know that many of us on here really appreciate the outreach that you've done. And also, just thank you to the staff at the MPO and Land of Sky. This is a lot of additional work on you all as well, and being able to adopt this today. And you guys have given us excellent presentations, the financial forecasting in the last couple months. And so I'm just very grateful that you guys have well prepared us for today. And thank you for all of your hard work. It doesn't go unnoticed by us.
Thank you. Next is the I-40 managed lanes PA consideration.
All right. I-40 managed lanes, PA considerations, that is, I should have put more acronyms in there. So just as a little bit of a background on what we're talking about, and help set up the conversation, this relates to a project known as I-6054. That was previously in the STIP. That is the widening of I-40 from roughly exit 44 in Buncombe County to exit 27 in Haywood County. It has been submitted as a widening in sections since P5, so right around 2017, 2018. It has been identified in the CCP as needing mobility upgrades dating back to at least 2007. To note is, every 2 years we do a congestion report. The last time we did one, this was the least reliable segment of interstate in the region that doesn't already have a project attached to it. So I-26, still number one and least reliable, but I-40 was right behind and does not have a widening project or really any project beyond Liberty Road attached to it. So also as a background, as a reminder, this actually came to the board in January of 2024. The board was asked to provide a letter of support for NCDOT to do a feasibility study on managed lanes to see whether or not this concept was even really feasible. And to note, the reason we're bringing this back is because that study has roughly wrapped up and made its findings. We have David Roy with NCDOT to talk about that. This isn't a concept that came out of nowhere. This is actually identified, managed lanes was identified as a potential recommendation for addressing congestion in the 2018 congestion management process. To be clear on what we're talking about, pictures are always helpful. So in general, with managed lanes, express lanes, toll lanes, however you want to call it, really what you're talking about is that, and in this concept, is that if I-40 were to be widened, as the lanes being added would be those that would be essentially tolled. The existing lanes on I-40 would remain as they are today. So just to be clear, other people have called these choice lanes. I think we heard in the TCC meeting. It would be the added lanes, that would be those that we're talking about tolling. And the existing 4 lanes, 2 in either direction, would remain as they are today. cross-section that we are talking about is either 6 or 8 lanes. Just to note, one of the differences in the cross-sections for a managed or toll lane project is that 4-foot buffer in between the free flow lanes and the toll lanes. That helps separate the traffic and helps the management and operations of the toll lane. So why are we even talking about this or considering this at all? One of the reasons is that, you know, every time we go through prioritization, we talk to folks around the region about what are their big priorities. And pretty consistently from Haywood County, we've heard that I-40's reliability issues are getting worse and worse. And, you know, from the data we see, it's very typical of our region. On average, it's not really that bad. When it gets bad, it gets extremely bad. There are limited alternative routes. We found that the backups, you know, especially when there are crashes along the corridor, can be pretty extensive. So in general, you know, hearing that feedback, one thing that we've noted is that it is very, very, very likely that a managed or toll lane project would score better in prioritization and increase its chances. The big reason why is because statewide mobility projects where this would be scored, 25% of that score is based on benefit cost. And when you're talking about having a facility get revenues from tolls, in general, what DOT studies found is that this idea would likely generate enough revenues to cover maintenance of the facility operation, as well as help to reduce the cost to NCDOT to build this project. And David, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're talking about a reduction from over $1 billion in funds needed from NCDOT to closer to $450 million. And that is because those revenues would be expected to pay off some of the bonds being used for construction. As Division Engineer Tim Anderson noted in our TCC meeting, as we've seen increased costs to our capital projects, DOT is also seeing an increase in cost to maintenance and maintaining our roads. Having a facility that can cover its maintenance is not a small thing. There's also, with these types of projects, there's a bonus allocation that is capped at $100 million. The study in general found that this project would likely go to the cap, that there would be $100 million made available for additional transportation projects in the area within eligibility. There's also ways to enable incentives for carpoolers and transit vehicles. And in general, managed lanes have been found to reduce congestion and improve reliability for all travel lanes, not just those managed lanes. So a frequent critique of managed lanes has been, well, those are Lexus lanes, you're just relieving congestion for those who can pay for it. But studies have found that all lanes tend to benefit. You are providing more capacity across the entire corridor. So studies from USDOT have found that doesn't benefit.
Could we possibly see those studies? I've read articles that say the opposite. And I lived in Texas where, of course, they sold their already paid for highways to a Spanish company, made them toll lanes, and no lane benefited from just, you know, observational experience. I'd be curious to learn, to read a study.
Absolutely. And before I hand things off, you know, why are we bringing this, or why are we talking about this? Managed lanes projects, toll lanes projects, NCDOT cannot submit those into prioritization. Only MPOs and RPOs can. And so if this is an idea that folks would like to pursue, then it is something that has to come from the MPO. And why now? Well, we're about to finalize our submittals for this round of prioritization. NCDOT just wrapped up their study. I should change that to 2 Fridays ago now. You know, we just want to make people aware of what's going on, and we'll have some options to talk about. But I do want to hand things off to David Roy with NCDOT, who is much more of an expert in this field than I am. So David, please take it away.
Thank you, Tristan. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Well, apologize for not being there in person today. We'll certainly, if we continue this conversation, make every effort to be there at follow-up meetings. But again, as Tristan mentioned, my name is David Roy. I am the Director of Innovative Finance for the North Carolina Turnpike Authority. And really in my role, my job is to help MPOs, RPOs across the state that are interested in considering tolling and alternative finance options to help accelerate some of their critical infrastructure projects. As Tristan mentioned, in North Carolina, tolling is a local decision, 100%. That's not just policy, that's in statute. So my job is not to advocate for particular options. It's simply to provide education and support and help locals make the best decision for their region. And you will probably hear me say that every time that we talk. And as Tristan mentioned, we really did just wrap up this study, and so I apologize for not having a formal presentation here. But again, given the timing with the P8 submission window, we wanted to at least begin the conversation. And as Tristan mentioned, I think he is going to talk through several options that we worked with the spot prioritization folks, the division, and the MPO staff to help provide the opportunity should the board wish to continue a conversation, understanding that a lot more information and discussion would be needed before there was a potential decision to be made. So I think Tristan will talk through that in a little more detail in a minute. But again, as mentioned, the board about 18 months ago requested the department and the Turnpike Authority to study managed lanes, feasibility of tolled express lanes on the I-40 corridor heading west out of Asheville. The initial step in that process is to run the project through a financial feasibility screening tool. It is a tool that was developed by the department to really give a high-level indication of whether it makes sense to potentially consider a project further. You know, tolling is one tool in the toolbox, but it is certainly not the right answer for every project. And in fact, the vast majority of projects across the state would not make sense as tolled projects. So the first step we take is to run the project through a financial feasibility screening tool that basically gives a high-level nod to, yes, we think the revenue generated from this project would be sufficient to cover operations, potentially some capital cost, et cetera. Given some unique features of this project, particularly around commercial vehicles, trucks in the corridor, there was enough question there that we requested from leadership of the department to run a level 1 traffic and revenue study to help further inform our analysis. And a level 1 traffic and revenue study is still a very 40,000 foot view of the project and the corridor, but it does provide a much more detailed analysis than the Excel-based feasibility screening tool that we have. So that is what the department with our traffic and revenue consultants has been working on. We looked at 2 scenarios. One would be to add 1 express lane in each direction. That is consistent with the project that has been previously submitted, adding 1 general purpose lane. So instead of adding the general purpose lane, that would be converted to a managed lane or an express lane. Again, given the commercial vehicles, the trucks that we saw in the corridor, we also looked at a 2 express lane option. So instead of adding just 1 express lane in each direction, we would add 2 express lanes. And there was a feasibility study done a number of years ago looking at an 8-lane option as well. At that point, I believe it's general purpose lanes, but it's not the first time we looked at a widening to 8 lanes as opposed to just 6. In the 2-lane scenario, we did allow for commercial vehicles to access the lanes. That would not be the case in the 1-lane scenario. Some of the reasons You may want to consider that. Again, just given the number of trucks in the corridor, there could be some potential benefit to allowing them in express lanes. Trucks typically pay a higher toll rate, a multiple of what a passenger vehicle could have, and therefore, even though they would make up a relatively small percentage of overall vehicles in the lanes, that could generate significant additional revenue to help support construction of the facility, and that's exactly what we saw in the study. So again, I'll certainly be back next month before you, should we want to continue this conversation with a much more detailed presentation about managed lanes, the feasibility study that we conducted, results, et cetera, and certainly to answer any questions that you have or that come up. But as Tristan mentioned, we just wanted to at least provide a high-level overview today, so we could continue the conversation and see if there's a desire to continue the conversation as we move forward. But again, as Tristan mentioned, generally speaking, what we saw was that in either scenario, the revenue generated from the project would be sufficient not just to cover the operations and maintenance of the general purpose lanes, but also help contribute to the capital costs or the construction of the lanes, and thereby reduce the cost to the state. And that's what would really potentially help the project score higher in prioritization, as that benefit cost to the state is increased. And depending on the scenario, the case we are looking at, the percentage there is from 25 to around 50% of overall capital costs could be potentially covered from the revenue generated on the facility. So again, a lot more to come on all of this, but wanted to at least have the initial conversation. I think there were a couple questions raised at the TCC meeting that I at least wanted to make mention of and touch on here as well. I think Tristan already mentioned the bonus allocation. The state does provide for a bonus allocation of up to $100 million for alternative funding sources that are brought to the table to help support construction of a project. In any scenario we looked at, it would qualify for the full $100 million in bonus allocation, which would be allowed to be used by the MPO on other critical projects in the region. From a revenue perspective, in North Carolina, toll revenue is limited to be used on the corridor where the revenue is generated or a contiguous toll facility. So, for example, it could and would certainly be used to maintain the corridor, not just the express lanes, but the project would likely be defined fence to fence, so could also be used to help support maintenance of the general purpose lanes. It could potentially be used for further expansion in the corridor, but it could not be used in another part of the state on another project. It would have to stay in the corridor in the region. As far as discounts, I think one question that we always get is what discounts may be available to locals. Anybody who signs up for an NC Quick Pass, a prepaid transponder account, is eligible for a 50% discount. That is not residency specific. Generally speaking, there are some limitations both at the state level and the federal level around providing specific discounts to local residents, specific zip codes otherwise, but anybody would be eligible to sign up for an NC Quick Pass and receive a 50% discount. There was also a question raised about access to the managed lanes around interchanges. Certainly a lot more design and development would be required to really define those limits, but generally speaking, access to and from the managed lanes is via egress points, typically in between interchanges that would allow for access for folks to get from the managed lanes or the express lanes to their exit. Depending on traffic volumes at a specific interchange, there could also be direct connects allowing access directly from the managed lanes to a specific interchange, but all of that would need to go through project development to really define what the project would look like in that respect. And then I think we already kind of touched on trucks in the managed lanes, commercial vehicles. In the two-lane express lane scenario, obviously given safety considerations, we would only consider trucks in the managed lanes or express lanes in a two-lane scenario. But as I mentioned, allowing commercial vehicles to utilize the lanes, particularly in this corridor, given the number of commercial vehicles in the corridor, could potentially significantly increase the revenue generated from the lanes and therefore the potential benefit from a scoring perspective in P8 or beyond. And Tristan, I think that's kind of at a high level what I wanted to touch on today. Again, I apologize for not having a formal presentation, but every intention to be back before you next month with a much more detailed presentation. Certainly happy to answer any questions now or follow up as they arise.
Thank you. Any questions for David? I know we'll have plenty of questions. What's our timing on this?
Great segue. In general, we are looking for some kind of decision today, but let me get through our options before we jump in on that. So in general, what we're looking at for today is option one. We can go ahead and add the I-40 managed lanes project from exit 44 to exit 27, and it will be in this round of prioritization. As David has made clear to us, even after the submittal, there's still multiple ways for us to back out, should that be the board's decision. And so just to note on that, but either way, something we've talked about with David is that this is a relatively new concept. This is not something that has had as much outreach as a lot of other things. And so either way, having additional discussion, education, and outreach would still be preferred, i.e. we're going to get to know David and his team quite well one way or the other. That's option one. Option two would be we don't add I-40 to the submittal this round. We can go ahead and make that call. That will give us time, 2 years, likely, until the next prioritization cycle to determine if that's something we want to submit. I will note, Division 14 has notified us that they would likely submit I-40 as a general widening, should the MPO not submit that. But again, they can't submit managed lanes. Option three, and this was the TCC recommendation, is to add I-40 widening as a P8 submittal. So that is just as a regular widening. And we can make a decision on whether or not that should be a managed lanes widening later. That later deadline is by our January meeting. I think should we go this route, we will likely ask David to be on every agenda up until January. But those are our options for today. I do see Councilmember Whitmer. Do you have your hand raised?
Yes, I do. Tristan, thanks for identifying me. First of all, I do have some experience with managed lanes and express lanes, and they generally work really well. However, the corridor that we're looking at, particularly the area from, say, mile marker 33 through mile marker 36, which is in the middle of that corridor, is probably the most accident-prone section of I-40 running from the extent of I-40. And particularly in the exit or mile marker 34, 35 area. And I know that personally because I was involved in an accident because of the curves there and the speeds that go on. An express lane or a managed lane, even though it has the same speed limit as the other lanes, generally picks up speed, the vehicles in that lane. So I heard a lot of good talk about what the financial implications are, but I didn't hear much about safety implications. And that section either needs to have those curves straightened out, which of course is probably not possible, but we need to give consideration to the safety issues within that 3 or 4 mile stretch, because it's awful.
Yeah, thank you. That's a very valid point. I think one of the things that could be beneficial from the managed lanes that we give us more funds to actually have better safety through there. They could somehow straighten that area. We call it the S-curve, right? Right now, you always have white knuckles as you drive through the S-curve. But I think one of the major benefits of having the managed lane in that area would be the additional funds and to get more safety into that. And to be clear, we're just in the very baby steps of this process, so that would be considered with the planning.
Yeah, and some from NCDOT have been, but if a project were to be funded, safety would be one of the things considered as part of design.
Yeah, I think that's the thing to remember is, obviously, especially if you go with a 4-lane section, even if you went with 1 lane each way versus the 2-lane each way, should call it 4-lane section, but it's not going to stay in this footprint completely. They'll have to be wide. They'll have to be right-of-way purchased, and as we build something like this, we bring it up to current standards. So if those curves aren't to a current standard, then they'd have to be redesigned. Ultimately, the goal would be to provide that option to alleviate some of that congestion. If you alleviate congestion, folks are further apart from each other. If they make a mistake, the mistake doesn't always turn into a crash. Where right now, if everything's really condensed and folks are driving in a tight location, there's not any room. There's no wiggle room for an accident, or for a mistake. But yeah, I mean, as part of that, it's not just widening enough to get the lanes, it's bringing it up to a better standard, the current standards.
Thank you, Tim. We've got a number of patient people. I do want to get to iPhone, who I believe is Councilmember Inslee. You've been waiting patiently, and I know you've got other things going on. So.
Yeah, Tristan, is it okay for me to speak now?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, sorry, I just got a few minutes. I just wanted to say, this is imperative that we try to get Y-40 widened with the mill closure. Our residents have to travel to Asheville to some of those in places of employment now that the paper mill is closed. So it's really important that we're able to get the interstate widened. And from what I understand is we can either use the lanes that are free, or if it's widened, we can get, a pass or whatever to use the other lanes. And then, if you want to use the free lanes, you can, but, and then also when you get that pass, you're able to use the lanes when you want to, and you're not charged until you do. I guess that's how that would work. So, that way they can, use that to get into the, into those lanes when they need to. And then when the traffic's good, they can just use the other lane. So I don't like tolls, and I wish, they would fund it, but, we really desperately need to get this widened. So if I'm not on when y'all vote, I am in favor of it, very much, just because of that, to help our residents out. It's an economic development tool, in my opinion. But thanks for letting me in.
Thank you, Chairman Inslee.
Mayor McAllister?
I've only been on this MPO for, it's been less than a year. So pardon me if I'm a little naive, but managed lanes, this is not new. This has been going on for dozens of years in dozens of states. And there's mountains of data available, pro and con, about what tolls do from a financial standpoint. But I really have a question. So if we add this, we've got dozens and dozens of projects proposed whose financial total is far more than the funding we're ever going to get. If we add this and it scores high, is it going to bump some of those low? Is it going to make it far less likely that Elkwood Avenue will ever get sidewalks? Could that be the net result of this?
That's a great question. In general, no. So this project would likely be evaluated in the statewide mobility tier. That is a funding tier that where our interstate projects, for the most part, compete.
It's a different pool than
different bottom line.
Different bottom line.
Okay.
All right. We're competing against others across the state.
Right. So in our region, it would compete against projects like A10, the Widening the Future 26. To point out, it already is competing. It would compete against other widenings of 26, 64 interchange, but in general, it's competing across the entire state. To the chairman's point, our interstate projects are competing against Charlotte, Raleigh, Wilmington. My advice to staff is like whatever we can get out of the statewide mobility tier is funding that prevents us from having to cascade projects into other tiers. So a lot of the projects in the past, when they haven't been funded in statewide mobility, we've cascaded them into the other tiers. That's when you start getting into competition with other types of projects. So kind of cascading down to regional impact, to division needs, that's the only way in which we would have our interstate projects competing against Elkwood or something like that.
So in essence, it would actually increase the likelihood that Elkwood would get done.
How's that?
Because then we would not cascade the project.
Oh, I understand. Okay, I remember the cascade. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that very much.
I want to make a suggestion, then I'm going to have to leave. But, you know, to me, this project has, obviously, I want to make sure the people from Haywood County are on board, and at least one Haywood County person said yes. And I assume the chairman got a yes in there somewhere. And Dr. Hamlin, they are agreeing.
I can't speak for Brandon, but Brandon's on the phone.
Yeah.
With his hands up, and I'm assuming he's going to be a yes.
But, and it's, you know, I mean, even if we put it in VA, it's not necessarily going to get funded, but its chances of getting funded are better. But I don't see a lot of downside to deciding today to move forward when we can always back out if we have to, or adjust and change as we go forward. So that would be, I would just make that suggestion. If you want me to put it in the form of a motion, I'm glad to.
I would love to, but I'm going to get, there's two people that would love to speak, and I think, did Brandon have his first?
I believe Commissioner Sloan.
You're correct.
Commissioner Sloan.
Yeah, just call on me. Yeah, so I think my question's for Tristan, and I think you just answered part of it, but I'm curious what impact financially or physically or timeline-wise would this project have on the proposed new Candler exit on 40, kind of connecting Pisgah Highway, that exit?
I'll lean on Tim in case I missed that here, but I believe the Liberty Road interchange that's planned for construction in 2029, 2030. And so I think it would be pretty unlikely for this project to begin construction within that time frame. This is still a relatively new concept that would have to start going through design. But I agree with that. This is something that, ideally we would be lining up for those future years.
I think you make that a great system as well. Want to make that note?
Yeah, a question. The notes on each of these options are instructive. With respect to option one, that is submit the managed lane, this is the note that Division 14 would submit whatever project we remove in order to submit this one. Do we need to remove a project and which project is it if we have to do that?
At the TCC, it's actually noted in the follow-up item. At the TCC, it was recommended that we remove the Delwood Road Access Management Project that's on US 19 in Haywood County. Division 14 agreed to submit that on our behalf if we removed it from our list.
Okay. Billy and I haven't talked, but we sort of come down, I guess, in the same place on this thing. I don't see any downside to supporting option one. It provides us with an understanding of what the interplay between getting money from another source, in this case, a managed lane, how it will affect how this thing gets graded. It sounds like Division 14 is backing us up regardless of what we do, meaning they're going to put forward the widening project if we don't submit a managed lane, and they're going to, if we do submit the managed lane, they're going to cover whatever project it is we have to set aside. So what's the downside here? I hate to agree with Billy Clark about much of anything, but, we've gone at this for a while. But I think I come down to the same place he is, and option 3 for me is just painful. Meaning, you mean I'm gonna have another 3 meetings to discuss the same set of issues? No. Don't go there. So I don't really see the downside.
I think we do want people be discussing this.
Well, I understand. There won't be a decision point because we will have made the decision as opposed to revisiting a decision at 4 months in the future.
With that being said, I would love to recognize Commissioner Rogers, Brandon Rogers. Hey, I'm Hamlin, Dr. Do you mind just a second, Dr. Hamlin? Commissioner Rogers?
Yeah, hey, thank you for all the detailed information. I actually had several questions at the top of my list that's already been answered, but and I do have some more, I'd like to see some more information. That's why I'm favoring option number 3, but I guess I do have a question on option 3. If we go with that, does that mean that we are planning on moving forward with widening it to 3 lanes on each side and still have the opportunity to add the toll lane, or does that mean that that 3rd lane would be the toll lane? I just want to be sure I understand that correctly.
Yeah, so option 3 would just be, we would submit the project as a white at the end of this month. And then we would defer the decision on whether or not that's a managed lane until January or October or November.
When you say submit to widening, are you excluding the possibility of the additional lanes?
So the widening, if we were to submit a widening, we would be looking at a 6 to 8 lane cross section for the project, but we would just submit it as a placeholder until that decision was made on whether or not those additional lanes are managed.
Would option 3 in any way include the additional lanes?
Yeah. So I think the way I understand it, I think all we're doing is move forward with the concept. We still have to rely on NCDOT to come up with a design. Right? I mean, that's ultimately where we're at.
Correct.
I'm sorry, Dr. Hamlin.
No, it's fine. And this may show my lack of intelligence here.
I don't.
But looking at option 1 and option 2, I really do not see that much of a difference between the options that are going to bid in January.
Yeah, that's my option 1. What's the benefit of one?
The option 3 would give us more time to discuss this issue. Right. Which is going to
But until
and reduce, but it's still January, right?
when is the likelihood of this going to bid?
Okay. 5 years. I'm sorry, beyond you and I.
I mean, what we're talking about is submitting this project for funding consideration. And the decision that we're asking is, should we submit this as just adding lanes, or that we are submitted, or should we not submit it? So options 1 or 2 are basically make a decision today about managed lanes. Option 3 is defer that decision until January.
Okay, let me ask about protocol. We have 3 options. So Robert's Rules of Order, do we vote each of these options and wait to see how they go? Or can I cut to the chase and make a motion for option number 3?
Except it's still got questions. We still have questions as well.
No, well, that was my question about protocol when it comes to that.
I mean, we love roll calls here, but we would entertain a motion on one of these specific options.
I have a quick question before we move to a motion. Sorry, I can't find the raise hand function.
Who was that? I'm sorry. Mr. Sloan.
Drew Ball in Buncombe County. I'm curious if there's any studies that we have or analysis on how much revenue would be expected to be raised from this, which industries or subsets of the population, whether it be local residents, out of towners, what level of income folks are typically most hard hit with these types of additional charges, because it seems like a lot of this will probably be commuters, so it almost seems like an additional tax on work. And I'm also just curious, kind of which industries are going to be hardest hit if we add this lane in.
Those are great questions. And David, do you have any information on those inquiries?
Yeah, so certainly the level of study that we conducted doesn't get into yet some of the questions raised. So as I mentioned, we conducted what's called a level 1 traffic and revenue study. There are 3 levels leading to ultimately what would be termed an investment grade traffic and revenue study if you were going to go finance this project. That would include much more socioeconomic data around some of the questions you were referencing. Generally speaking, from a revenue perspective, it showed the level 1 study showed generating anywhere from 3 to about 7 billion in revenue over the life of the project, depending on which scenario we were. And because it's such a high level study, we looked at a range of scenarios within each alternative. So a lot more would certainly need to be done around that for this project to move forward, and would be done through the project development phases. As I think Tristan mentioned, the likely outcome or potential would be this project may be funded for preliminary engineering, which would allow us to begin a lot of that work. But it would certainly be a number of years before it was actually moving forward towards construction.
That would be helpful, and I'd also be curious about the public-private partnership that would manage this. I know that in some states it almost seems at times seem almost predatory when I'd be curious what percentage of that revenue would go to the company, because sometimes I see, particularly up north, short response times to get back if you do a photo toll or something like that, and those costs can quickly increase for some folks.
So we're not talking about delivery method here. Certainly a public-private partnership, a P3 similar to what you see on the I-77 North Express lanes out of Charlotte is an option. Again, the department has taken the policy that for a project to move forward as a P3, as you were kind of describing, the MPO would be involved in that decision as well. So that is something that could be up for discussion down the road, but nothing. Certainly the decision before you in the near term is not around delivery method, whether it would be managed by the Turnpike Authority or a private developer. This is really about the concept of managed lanes.
Thank you.
Okay, I would like to offer a motion on option number 3.
Commissioner Sloan has his hand.
There's a motion on the floor.
Thank you. So I guess my question is around.
There's continuing discussion.
There's a motion on the floor. I'll second the motion.
We have a first and we have a second. Roll call.
Hey, Tristan, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm traveling, and for some reason I didn't hear what the motion was. Do you mind to repeat that?
Yes, Commissioner Rogers, that was for option number 3, which will allow us to have much more discussion going forward.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Did Parker still have those comments?
Yes, I believe
Okay, I'll recognize Mr. Sloan.
My question is around, I guess, what traffic analysis went into this project in the first place. Potentially that was years ago, but I assume there were some assumptions or math around future population growth in Haywood and Buncombe County. But I'm also guessing there's some sort of projection on interstate traffic throughout the I-40 corridor that went into necessitating this idea? And particularly asking that question in regards to the gorge and its present condition, its future. Like what assumptions are we having around the future of the gorge in this discussion?
That's a really good question, Commissioner Sloan. I'll let MCDOT follow up, but I mean, with the MPP that was adopted, that does include area-specific population projections, so we can provide you with that information. But in general, you know, we're seeing the commuting pattern between Haywood and Buncombe increasing. And the travel demand model that is for our region, it does show traffic projections for I-40. I don't know those offhand, but that is a tool that is available. But if MCDOT wants to follow up on what specifically was used as part of the analysis, that'd be great.
I think with option 3, we're going to get a lot more presentation in the next meeting. So I would suggest if you have any additional questions or concerns, let us know before the next meeting, and we can make sure that's in the presentation. Right. So we do have a first and a second, and we'll call for a roll call.
Sure. Asheville, Kim Maroney.
Aye.
Asheville, Sage Turner.
Aye.
DOT Division 14, Chuck McGrady.
No.
Buncombe County, Drew Ball.
Aye.
Buncombe County, Parker Sloan.
Aye.
Canton, Dr. Ralph Hamlet.
Aye.
Flat Rock, Emily Whitmire.
Aye.
Fletcher, Jim Slayer.
Aye.
Haywood County, Brandon Rogers.
Aye.
Haywood County, Kevin Ensley. Hendersonville, Jennifer Hensley.
No.
Laurel Park, George Banta.
No.
Madison County, Matt Wessel.
Aye.
Montreat, Tom Widmer.
Aye.
Biltmore Forest, Drew Stevens.
Aye.
Wadensville, Anthony Sutton.
Aye.
Weaverville, Catherine Cordell. And Woodson, Jim McAllister.
Aye. The ayes have it, Mr. McGrady.
Yeah, just one additional comment. I kidded about Billy and I, but seriously, I wanted to catch him. I mean, my perspective from a board perspective is we're going through a process that doesn't mean absolutely much because the likelihood of this, whatever project we put forward in that space, getting funded, given what the long-range projections of the income and the long-range projections of the costs of the projects we've already had there for a good long time. And so I'd say to everybody, let's not get our pants in a wad over all of this because it doesn't amount to a lot, in my opinion, and Billy concurred with me on that.
We appreciate your wisdom.
He was going to support the amendment, the position too. So we agree but disagree.
I think this will be a lively discussion at the next meeting as well.
Not by me.
We have a tendency of talking a lot about items.
I know.
Yeah. So thank you. That being said, the P8 project submittal.
All right, and I'll try to make this one relatively quick. And to note, Hannah did put out coffee for anyone who starts to fade.
Appreciate it.
So, quick reminder, prioritization, what are we talking about? We're talking about the process that is essentially the bridge between long-range plans and what is actually getting funded. It is a process governed by the Strategic Transportation Investment Act of 2012, data-driven and transparent. It leaves out, that's complicated. But in general, this is the process that determines what projects in North Carolina in general are getting funded. There's other processes to do that, but this is the big one. That essentially a lot of the interchanges, highway widening, access management, modernization, et cetera, this is where a lot of the funding comes from. For the schedule, this is final submittals. Those are due at the end of this month. We did pass draft submittals in August, and that went out for public comment. I'll go over a few of the public comments that we received, but in general, we have a due date to finalize our submittals, and that is this meeting. With projects that get submitted and get considered for funding in this process, I'd like to remind folks that with both carryover projects or projects that are automatically put into the process, those are either sibling projects or projects that are connected or associated with projects that are under construction or in the SIP. Also, projects that were decommitted in the last round, so Sweet Creek Road, South Main Street, US 64 interchange, those are all projects and more that are automatically in the process because of their carryover status. So I won't read through all of these. These are also available in your packet. These are the carryover projects for your information. Some of the changes from this round, or from last round to this round, there's fewer projects that we're allowed to submit. There's a 30% reduction in submittals across the board. Just to note, Vicki and I go to Chapel Hill or Hillsborough or wherever the meeting is, somewhere far away. And this was a recommendation from the work group to reduce submittals, especially after 2 rounds where there was no funding, having more and more projects being considered didn't make a whole lot of sense. But 18 new submittals for the MPO, that's down from 26, and that's 18 per mode, just to be clear. NCDOT also put out their funding projections for statewide mobility. It's over $1.6 billion that is projected to be available this round. That is not a large amount when you think about it, especially given the fact that we have one statewide mobility project that is almost that amount. Regional impacts, that's expected to have $186 million. I'll note that's the first time I've seen that in positive numbers since 2019. So not a huge amount, but it's something. Division needs for Division 13, that's 132. Division 14, that's 235 million. The STIP unit did put in a note of these numbers are likely to change, likely in the downward direction, with updated cost estimates being applied. So the new submittals, the highway submittals that we're talking about, I won't read through all of these, but feel free to stop me. Try to tell me. If you have any questions, these are also available in your packet. One project to note, Elkwood Avenue, that is one that has several members from the public. That is one that was on our draft list and our final list to modernize Elkwood and Old Burnsville Highway from 251 to 25. That was talked about as a sidewalk priority between the city of Asheville and the town of Woodfin. But to note, the intersection at 251 has some issues. For some reason, Old Burnsville Highway is 4 lanes for a few hundred feet, and then it isn't. The intersection with Lakeshore could certainly use some help, and I believe there have been several reported crashes at that location. So just to point that out.
May I ask a question that may again reflect my newness?
Please do.
Some of the projects, especially on the first page, the carryover project, that total hundreds of millions, $150 million each, particularly to upgrade future I-26. Since we know that's not going to happen, why would we keep those on the list and let them suck up money that could go for smaller projects that might impact people's daily lives. Am I asking the right question?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Future 26 would be eligible to compete in the statewide mobility tier. So with that being $1.6 billion available, it's one that certainly could be competitive.
It's a different pool of money.
It's a different pool of money than more of your secondary local roads. And also that project has been split up so that individual interchanges can be considered as well. So in general, with this list, we have a few swings for the fences. Those are projects that we think are really important. Whether or not there's enough funding available, there's something we certainly want to keep in the system. But we do have a number of projects where we are trying to think strategically and with limited funding available, trying to have some of those lower cost options.
Thanks for helping me understand. I appreciate your patience.
Absolutely. Good question. The changes, since you saw this in August, we did remove the Sandhill Road and Sandhill School Road intersection improvement project. We replaced that with a multiple intersection improvement project along Clingman Avenue at Patton and Hilliard Avenues. That was identified as the Patton Avenue corridor study. It also, the Clingman Avenue project overlaps with the safety priorities identified in the region safety plan, more so than the Sandhill Road project. And also, I'll note the Sandhill Road project, it scored decently last round. We think the Clingman project has a pretty good shot. We also did receive public comments, and I'll just note we're getting some prioritization heard in the region. Fantastic. To be clear. So we got one public comment asking if the Weaverville Highway project, Weaverville Highway and Merriman Avenue modernization project may be a better project to submit than the Ellswood Avenue. The great question. That is a project that was submitted last round that scored quite well. In general, this goes to kind of thinking strategically. That project, when it was submitted last round, the cost estimate was, I believe, around $18 million. There was an express design done, and that express design updated the cost to greater than $120 million. From the staff take on that is that is a good project we should keep thinking about. But for this round, $120 million is that's going to be a swing for the fences.
And large portions of that are in the floodplain, which when the floodplain is redrawn, will be in the floodplain.
Right. Why go after the funding of the?
Why widen the road that's only going to be washed out? It washed out 2 years ago and again with lean and, thank you.
I would much rather do that.
Or something else. I don't want to be selfish.
But yeah, it actually, the person gave great commentary on the potential of the project. In Haywood County, again, with the what we just discussed, we would be talking about actually removing the Delwood project from our list and replacing that with the I-40 widening with managed lanes to be determined. Division 14 would submit Delwood Road. Either way, one thing that we changed was shortening the project from Jonathan Creek Road to Russ Avenue. Again, with cost in mind, that is roughly a third of the length and is a part of Delwood Road where there's already considerable community support. Henderson County, the list was unchanged on improvements. To note, we did, a board member did note that improvements at Howard Gap and Sugarloaf would be something that would be a good submittal. The Division 14 did agree to submit that, and that does overlap with safety priorities from the safety plans. Madison County, unchanged in their highway with bike ped projects. And read through all of these. The change on the Buncombe County list, we removed the old Haywood Road sidewalks from Patton to Patton. I believe Division 13 is actually going to submit that. We replaced that with North Blue Ridge Road sidewalks in Black Mountain. Both projects were in D7 and Sportwell. North Blue Ridge Road makes our list a little more geographically equitable. In Haywood County, we did get a couple of comments requesting the addition of Allen's Creek Road sidewalks from Piney Mountain Road to Allen's Creek Park. Division 14, in coordination with them and the town, plans to submit that as a potential project. Thanks, Division folks. Bike ped in Henderson, that list was unchanged, as well as bike ped projects in Madison. Rail projects, we only have 3. That is crossing improvements at Riverside Drive, where the crossing treatment right now is the train engineer gets out and waves at people. There's also been a number of bike crashes reported along that crossing. Passenger rail service from Salisbury to Asheville and grade separation at Blue Ridge Road that was requested by the rail division at NCDOT. Public transportation, we have 4 projects on the list. A couple of changes from the last time you saw this, removing Henderson County expansion vehicles. That was at the request of Henderson County, and we removed City of Asheville's mobile fare collection project. We've got feedback that that is not eligible in the prioritization process. So that is the reason for that change. One other thing to note, the Land and Sky RPO is generously donating the project to the MPO that we have to formally accept. That is, Vicki, do you want to fill us in on that?
Sure, it's from NC 151 Sitka Highway in Buncombe County to Wiggins Road, exit 37 on I-40. It would be upgrade roadway, but that stretch is 1923. And I-40 is a mess. We need relief valves. So that would benefit the western part of Buncombe County and Haywood.
Absolutely. Thank you, Vicki. And that could be accomplished quicker than the widening of I-40 as well.
I suspect so.
Right, guys?
Much cheaper.
There's only 2 ways for a passenger, unless you go.
Big way or the other way?
The big way or the other way, or you have to go all the way to Tennessee through Hot Springs to just.
Or the Parkway.
Or the park, well, when it's open. So it's either 2 hours, 3 hours, or 4 hours.
Yep.
So next step, we are looking for approval today of the final list of submittals, including that addition of I-40 and accepting the generous donation from Land and Sky RPO. But moving forward, this is just the start of the process. We will have more conversation on express designs. We'll eventually get the scores back in the spring. And then we'll talk about local input points, and all of that goes into developing a new STIP.
And this could change if we go different options for Interstate 40.
Well, it's either way at this point, based on the last item, I-40 will be on the list of what's submitted. We'll have to follow up as to whether or not that project is a simple widening to add lanes or a widening to add Magnus lanes. Perfect.
Questions? Mr. McCallum has made the motion that it be approved and submitted. We have a second.
Second.
Thank you, Chairman Russell.
Asheville, Kim Rooney.
Before the vote, can we just confirm that the Elkwood issues that the community has lifted up can be included in this? That wasn't clear in the motion.
Yeah, just to be clear, that's part of why we submitted it as a roadway modernization, so that more than one sidewalk issues can be addressed.
Thank you. Aye.
Asheville, Sage Turner.
Aye.
DOT Division 14, Chuck McGrady.
Aye.
Buncombe County, Drew Ball.
Aye.
Buncombe County, Parker Sloan. Camden, Dr. Ralph Hamlet.
Aye.
Flat Rock, Emily Whitmire.
Aye.
Fletcher, Jim Slayer.
Aye.
Haywood County, Brandon Rogers.
Aye.
Haywood County, Kevin Ensley. Thank you. Hendersonville, Jennifer Hensley.
Aye.
Laurel Park, George Vanta.
Aye.
Madison County, Matt Wexel.
Aye.
Montreat, Tom Whitmer.
Aye.
Biltmore Forest, Drew Stevens.
Aye.
Waynesville, Anthony Sutton.
Aye.
Weaverville, Catherine Cordell. And Woodfin, Jim McAllister.
Aye.
Yeah, I have it.
Perfect. Moving on to the next item, functional classification changes. I'm sure, why don't we have an acronym?
FT used a few times in his presentation.
I
am going to try to do this in 5 minutes, looking at the rest of the agenda. I had 7 minutes before roll call. So federal functional classification updates. This is a classification system maintained by FHWA, Federal Highway Administration, and it attempts to strike a balance between what planners and engineers recognize as the inherent conflict between mobility and access, either trips and roadways that facilitate those trips that are really connecting communities, people traveling fairly long distances, trying to reach a place, versus facilities that just circulate trips within a community or try to gather trips together and collect them to those higher order facilities to travel to. And what the feds use this for is, that's the next slide. The classifications in this facility range from interstates, which are by definition the most highly mobile facilities that we use, in a steady progression downward down to just collectors and then local roads. Anything above a local road is considered functionally classified, and your arterials, community to community type flow, and your collectors, kind of this gathering and distribution. And so what FHWA uses these classifications for, first is funding eligibility, to be eligible to receive federal funds, which make up the greatest part of our new highway construction funds. It needs to be on the system at a level higher than local for most circumstances. And other than that, it's used for a lot of data reporting. If you're ever interested in how many vehicle miles are driven on minor arterials, that data gets published monthly, I think. And then other states around the country have used federal functional classification for different purposes, such as programming and prioritization. We just went through our prioritization system. You didn't hear functional class mentioned at all. That's not how North Carolina does it, but many states do. Safety programs, design programs, and highway design is on there twice. I've given this presentation 4 times, I haven't noticed. Highway design is one of the other elements where it does come up in North Carolina. Sometimes there are different minimum designs for an arterial than a collector. And so what has happened is, since there was just a census, FHWA has asked all states across the country to update the federal functional classifications for their area. This is in an attempt to represent the roadway system as it is, how people in the area are using it, not what we wish it to be. This is not a program or a plan. This is just to reflect the world as it is. And since every state across the entire country is doing this kind of up at the same time, they've opened a special window and simplified the process. But the process is never really closed. We can do updates anytime we want. And so while we are kind of producing a bulk change list now, don't let this scare you off if there's a future change that needs to happen or anything we miss. We can always make that change in the future. And
to kind of make these bulk updates, we're looking for NCDOT needs to submit our paperwork to FHWA by November 1st. That means we're asking all the MPOs and RPOs to kind of approve these changes before that. So the process that was kind of pre-approved by FHWA started in the spring, where DOT put together a committee. So this is now kind of talking more meat and potatoes. This is we're getting into the changes. And they worked looking at different characteristics of the roadway, the traffic, the urbanization, and where it kind of fits in the hierarchy of roads, how smaller roads can feed larger roads, smaller and larger, but by purpose. And they sent staff a draft at the very end of June. We spent 2 days feverishly giving comments, and then it went out more widely to MPO, RPO, and division staff mid-July. So in July and August, staff have worked on this, and these are the changes we think are necessary to more reflect the truth on the ground. And we've prepared the table that is in your agenda. The organization and heading of this table came from FHWA. It's slightly confusing every time I pull it open. But hopefully this went out between meetings. I only got to speak very briefly last month on this topic, kind of in my closing notes, but hopefully everybody had a little time to look at it between meetings when you got your agenda. So let me just talk about the recommendations in general. About half are new proposals and about half are changes. The new proposals primarily are either minor arterial roads being elevated to minor arterial status that have kind of grown into more of a concern, or very small segments that were being fixed for one of the reasons we'll get into in a second. And then about half are changes. These are typically as roads or as communities expand, as there's more travel between two areas, even though the road was already functionally classified, we thought a different classification was warranted, either higher or lower, but some sort of change. And this was our general process, was to look for new roads that need to be added to the system. The only one in this region was the Davidson River Connector, brand new road, needs some sort of classification. Extended to serve growth, we see this where development continues to happen down a corridor, and where last census a decision was made that the classification would change. We look at it today and we think that change should happen somewhere else. The road we're on today, New Leicester, is a good example. Development keeps creeping out, and we're updating the classifications to try to reflect that. Several minor collectors to extend coverage in underserved areas. These are the aforementioned kind of edge of development. We're talking south and east Waynesville, south and east Hendersonville, everywhere, South Asheville got a lot of attention. Roads fit the hierarchy. So there's this general belief that smaller roads or lower classification roads feed higher classification roads. And so some of the inconsistencies we saw, things left over from previous censuses, like NC 280 was considered a principal arterial in both Mills River and in Brevard, but then it dropped between the two towns, and it makes more sense for the corridors to be consistent in one classification throughout, and that covers US 276, the US 64 changes. Technical fixes, this is a data maintained by the government, so there's always little things we see that we think should be corrected, even though they're not really changing the nature of the recommendation. For example, between Asheville and Black Mountain, US 70 and I-40 parallel each other, and there are interchanges and you can move from one facility to the other, but none of those crossroads were included under the previous recommendation, so we gathered small links like that that should just should have been there all the time and haven't been missing. Or we also see sometimes, very popular in Haywood County for a road to approach the interstate and then end, and it's obviously because somebody decided to draw the road to the interstate, but it wasn't an interchange, so there was no access point, so that had to be tweaked to go a little farther to connect into the entire network. And then 2 segments were removed, but thankfully they weren't roads. One was a river somebody at one point digitized and added to the database, and the other one was a proposed project from yesteryear that got added in presumption that it was going to be built, and the project was not built and is not supported anymore. So that is what makes up the table in your recommendation list, and if those changes look like they are true to you, then we would entertain support to take this to FHWA. Oh, I will correct one thing that the TCC noticed that is in the table, which is the small section of Broadway between Merriman Avenue and Lexington, where it kind of crosses and then becomes the ramp onto 240. We recognize that as part of the ramp system. That kind of made the most sense once we looked at Merriman and Broadway. And by protocol, if it's a ramp to a facility, it takes on the characteristic of the higher order facility, and therefore it gets called a freeway, or an interstate, it gets called an interstate. That causes people's eyes, so I thought I'd point that out. Thank you.
Any questions? I think we're moving to accept this recommendation.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. Second. Thank you, Dr. Hampton.
All right, Asheville, Kim Rooney. Asheville, Sage Turner.
Aye.
DOT Division 14, Chuck Grady.
Aye.
Buncombe County, Drew Ball.
Aye.
Buncombe County, Parker Sloan. Canton, Dr. Ralph Hamlet.
Aye.
Flat Rock, Emily Whitmire.
Aye.
Fletcher, Jim Flair.
Aye.
Haywood County, Brandon Rogers.
Aye.
Haywood County, Kevin Ensley. Hendersonville, Jennifer Hensley.
Aye.
Laurel Park, George Banta.
Aye.
Madison County, Matt Wechsel.
Aye.
Montreat, Tom Whitmer.
Aye.
Biltmore Forest, Drew Stevens.
Aye.
Waynesville, Anthony Sutton.
Aye.
And Woodfin, Jim McAllister.
Aye.
Yeah.
Perfect. I'd like to make a note that we have concluded with the business portion of our agenda and moving to informational items. Does anyone need a break? No. Forge ahead.
Power through, brother.
Power through. Informational I-26 connector update.
Great enough. Yeah, and with us today are Tim Anderson and Nathan Moneyham to provide an update on the 26 connector.
See if I can get the sharing going. I noticed, but we can go without it for sake of time, rather than me trying to figure that out. Again, I'm Nathan Moneyham, Division Construction Engineer. Appreciate the time, appreciate Chris Deaton, our Deputy Division Engineer, covering this for me last week at TCC. If I can get the thing together. Here we go. Wanted to provide an update on several sections of the I-2513 connector. It's been a couple of months since I had been here. For I-2513 AAAB, which is the project on I-40 in the vicinity of Smuggy Park Interchange. We have some current operations going. We are installing new sewer line. Currently, the substructure and walls for the railroad bridge have begun. We've got some grading and drainage installation ongoing.
and you'll start to see some of the initial asphalt removal and concrete pavement demo to replace some of the concrete out there as well. The phase 2 traffic configuration is what you see it in currently, which is those are the outside lanes that are closed. We expect it'll be in that configuration for approximately about 18 months while we continue to work on the construction of the railroad bridge. Upcoming, we have a culvert extension on I-40 westbound that we'll be starting. In addition to some water line installation, you'll start to see some soil nail construction for the walls associated with the exit ramp. Project is on schedule, still tracking for completion in March of 2029, and we'll continue to update as we make progress on the project. For the other section of I-25-13AC, that's our other bid build section. This is 240 from in kind of the middle section up to Haywood Road coming from 40. As we talked about last time, we are updating those plans with the principles for the O&R process that we talked about here before. No major design changes in that. Really, it's just a matter of cost containment and matching that to the cross section that was ultimately determined on I-25-13BD, meaning the narrower shoulders and a lot of the changes that were made on that project. We are still on track and working towards a let date in November of next year. Right-of-way acquisition is ongoing. We've got about 95% of the utility parcels complete. All contacts have been made as far as the other acquisitions. We're still working towards finishing the acquisition process. Utility location, now that utility parcels are complete, should begin next month, and you'll start to see Duke and others begin working in the area. For our 2513BD, the larger portion of the design build project, we are continuing in design. The 25% plan submittal has been approved with comments that will be incorporated into the next submittal, which is the right-of-way plan submittal, which was submitted several weeks ago and is currently under review now. That includes intersection details, which were submitted as a part of that package. That has to do with things like intersection layout. We are currently and met even this morning and earlier this week, and we'll continue to meet with city staff and others locally, Ashland Bike and some of the local organizations, as we look at the multimodal aspects of crosswalks and pedestrian signalization as we work through those elements of the design in the next few months. Geotech investigations are ongoing across the area for the project. The design noise report is on schedule. I know we talked about this schedule last time I was here presenting to the board. We're monitoring. Monitoring was completed, and the validation models and draft validation were submitted in July, and we're working towards a draft design noise report in January of 2026. With the final noise report coming next spring. Right-of-way acquisition is ongoing generally right now with early acquisitions that have been started with those parcels that are complicated relocations. We do expect, as the right-of-way plans are reviewed and revised, that we will begin the bulk of the remaining right-of-way acquisition this November. Utility coordination is ongoing as well, both for aerial lines, determining utility easement needs, as well as water and sewer throughout the corridor. Construction and the target for that is expected to begin in the summer of 2026 as we work through these design submittals through the winter and into the spring. Update on some of the other aspects of the project, most notably the need for reevaluation. As many are aware, the EIS for the project was completed and record decision was reached in May of 2023. With O&R and with the changes that were made in procurement, we are currently developing a reevaluation document that tracks those changes from the preliminary plans up to final design to ensure that the purpose and need of the project are met. And that's in line with any project with these kind of substantial changes like the ones that were made in O&R, to reduce the footprint of the project and costs to allow it to move forward. And really it's a submission to Federal Highways for them to evaluate and confirm that the FEIS and the ROD remain valid. These changes include the footprint of the project, the reductions in right-of-way, the combining of structures, the removal of the interchange on the east side of the river, as well as the overpass altercation, even in the I-26 and Patton interchange being flipped from under to over. You know, that's not necessarily significant to the purpose and need. It is all included in that submittal, along with all of the public comment from the meeting in May, or April rather, as well as the public comment that we have received since. All of that is a part of the submittal that we will make available once it's completed, and will go to Federal Highways for review. Nathan, I think some of the people here probably saw the news that the environmental document was being reopened. Can you kind of provide clarification? Sure. What's really going on? So it is not being reopened. The record decision and the impact statement from May of 2023 is still in effect. What's really happening is the submittal that's being prepared and submitted is a submittal to FHWA for them to review and determine if that is necessary, if the document needs additional environmental impact studies. And that our expectation through coordination with Federal Highways is that our document will remain valid. But this process is the formal process of a submittal to FHWA for that review and approval. And again, like I said, it includes the public comment we've gathered from the April public meeting and since in that submittal.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Are there any questions?
You've got one.
Oh, yeah. That's right back in its time.
There's a couple other efforts that we wanted to cover that I alluded to in the last presentation to the board that have been ongoing in the past several months. The first is the reconvening of the Asheville Aesthetics Advisory Committee. This was the same group that had met for many, many years and was instrumental in determining the aesthetic commitments that are being applied to the project. We convened that committee through coordination with the city. City coordinated those meetings. And through discussions with the department and the contractor and the committee, reviewed the changes to the plan both from O&R and from the overpass design. The result of that is an additional $1.2 million roughly of funds from the department to apply aesthetic enhancements to the overpass structure. There's a list of those here, and we'll make it available, Tristan, if you want to go back and look later, but that includes additional pedestrian lighting under the bridge, installed and maintained by NCDOT. Additional conduit installed for future decorative lighting to be installed and maintained by the city of Asheville. The lighting itself, we would put in the conduit and pay for that, but it would basically allow for future lighting as desired. We did change to a vertical abutment for the I-26 overpass bridge, which was a request of the committee. That's, again, at DOT's cost. We've also applied standard form liner and multicolored stain to bridge barrier wall. We've also included the installation of sleeve detachment points on the outside girders of the bridge. Really, that was something that we had a lot of discussion about, but attaching these sleeves would basically allow for future attachments to be put on the bridge in the realm of public art, whatever that may be. But it would allow for future art installations on the structure itself. We also have committed to evaluate and install alternative bridge joints, specifically for noise reduction under the structure along the pedestrian path.
Is there a question? Is there anything I know, I mean, it may strictly be a law enforcement issue, but these jackasses that feel the need to tag every new construction project with their graffiti and whatnot, is there anything in DOT's plans to you know, you guys spend all this money making these things look great, and then these jackasses get out there and tag everything with their graffiti. And then, you know, the cover up of that then looks just as bad as the graffiti does in most cases. So, I mean, I mean, that may not be a function of this board, but how does that play into the future of this?
There are some things we can do, related to the installation of stain and those things and anti-graffiti type that makes it easier to clean off. Generally, those have varied levels of success. So what you're talking about, sometimes what's left after you clean is not that much better. So I think there's an enforcement nature to that. I think part of this, and specifically to the committee, the wall that we mentioned, and a lot of the surfaces on the overpass itself, a lot of requests from the committee that those be left without any specific form liner, because they're wanting to encourage art installations and those kind of things on those, which the hope would be that those types of things, when it's not just a monochromatic rock wall, if it's a piece of art or something, that it discourages that. But a lot of that's subjective and, art show.
I was kind of seeing public art installation meant we were going to go ahead and let them graffiti the thing.
I don't know, that would be whatever agreement with the city as far as that goes, but I think the idea is something much more planned, with that.
Thank you, sorry to interrupt.
You're good. In addition to those and the NCDOT's additional contributions out of this effort with the committee, there was some cost savings that come from the reduced footprint of the project through O&R in the shoulder width reductions and the removal of the interchange and the redesign of the Hill Street area. All that led to some available balance from the previously committed funds by the city of Asheville. So part of the effort of the committee was to look at those funds and reapply them. And the decision that they made was to update to a custom form liner on the overpass bridge itself. That is something that they are working to design and have got priced with some suppliers, as well as to widen the MUP from the Bowen bridges to out under the I-26 overpass to 18 feet. That's specifically related to the design of the Bowen bridges once interstate traffic is removed, has a much wider pedestrian path. On the south side of Patton specifically, it includes a multi-use path as well as a cycle track. And the idea here that the committee approved was to extend that extra width through the interchange and up under the bridge for that stretch. So that, you see those numbers there, and that's the reapplication of those funds. The result of these meetings were presented to the City Council last week, and these commitments will ultimately be incorporated into the construction contract with Archie Wright Joint Venture as an amendment to the previously approved aesthetic guidelines through a supplemental agreement. So they will become contractual requirements for our contract. The other effort that has been ongoing is we have had some stakeholder coordination with the division and the design team, specifically with the American Institute of Architects, the AIA, Western North Carolina, the I-26 Citizen Coalition, some elected officials, city, county, and NPO staff. We had our first meeting with them, I think back in June, where the ideas from the charrette that was put on by the I-26 Coalition were presented to the department and the design build team. We took those ideas and the design build team spent a considerable amount of time evaluating those for concepts for feasibility, as well as cost and schedule impacts. And then we reconvened with the group and went through those findings. I'm going to cover some of those today, specifically in three key areas of topics of discussion that were brought up, being the Hillcrest Bridge and Hill Street Roundabout, Patton Avenue Overpass, and Haywood Road. Specifically for the Hillcrest Bridge and the Hill Street Roundabout, there were several alternatives that came from the charrette that the design build team was asked to evaluate, and they did that. Generally, the focus there was trying to minimize right-of-way impact. The design build team did evaluate a four-way stop in place of the roundabout. We did prepare some exhibits for a realigned structure where the roundabout was located more in line with Isaac Dixon School Road. And we did prepare a modified roundabout at the originally planned location where we reduced the size and reduced the impact on the adjacent properties. Ultimately, the group there that we had met with, including some of the FBO staff and the IAA and the coalition folks that were represented, expressed a preference for the modified roundabout. Reason being is that it preserved the connection to the Hillcrest community, which was really lost when we slid the bridge down to Isaac Dixon. As far as the access there for the Hillcrest community, it retained the pedestrian and bike and vehicle safety benefits that you get with a roundabout. And with the modified roundabout, we still were able to reduce the impacts to the properties along Portland Avenue. So from that effort, we were able to make some changes, and those changes are incorporated and being included in the current right-of-way plan submittal that's under review. For the Patton Avenue overpass, from the charrette and the efforts of the coalition and AIA, there was a alternative proposed. This alternative was to shift Patton Avenue south and raise its grade up over I-26. You see some of the design work that was done by some of the members of the coalition, but our design build team carried this design further and actually did a significant amount of work to evaluate this as a feasible option. There were two things that came out of that effort that we shared with the coalition group, specifically that because of the shift to the south and the effects on the I-26 interstate ramps, it did cause the increased impact to two homes in West Asheville, two additional total takes. Residents that were not affected by the project that in this alternative were. And the other thing that we saw when you look at the required grades for the facility, it generally made Patton Avenue less pedestrian and bicycle friendly just because of the steep grades going up and over I-26. It's a 6% grade for a considerably long stretch. The other thing from a cost perspective is overall bridge area increased. And it also was a significantly higher cost from a structures component as well. So we went through this with the group in detail, and ultimately there was agreement that the new alternative was not preferable. I just want to say thank you to DOT for exploring that with the communities. I'll also note that I think it was pretty impressive that I think it was a landscape architect came up with this concept, and it actually looked pretty good for a little bit. But I think running through those alternatives was an important part of kind of the community conversation. And I will note the 6% grade, less pedestrian and bike friendly, but I believe that also violates the ADA. And it was for a considerable length too, that grade as well. So not a small area. The last area that we kind of note, and again, we talked about more than we could cover here specifically, but I wanted to highlight was Haywood Road. Several specific aspects of Haywood Road that were reevaluated over the past several months, specifically Burton Street. The intersection of Burton Street, we did look at some additional options that were requested by the coalition through the charrette, really geared towards trying to maintain that left out of Burton Street. We looked at signal synchronization and a couple other options, but really every option we looked at, and we presented this back to the coalition, the group, had significant safety concerns when it came to the associated ramp signal and the distance between those things. So Based on that evaluation, the intersection of Burton Street remains a right in, right out in its current configuration. Hanover Street is another area of concern that we are still evaluating. In both the 2018 preliminary plans and the current designs, the connection from Hanover Street to Haywood Road is removed. Out of this conversation, we're still evaluating, but we have committed to exploring options to retain limited connectivity within the I-2513AC design, which is that project that lets next November. This is the dividing line between those two projects. So it gives us a little time to evaluate some additional options and discuss with the coalition, the MPO, the AIA, and city staff, specifically focused on, and this was the request of the committee, some sort of maybe limited transit connection for the buses in that area, utilizing the space of Hanover. So we are evaluating that now, and future discussions will be had with those groups. The others, go ahead.
I was going to ask, did you say that there's still plans to move forward with a new signal on Michigan?
Correct.
So just so folks are aware, with the closure of Hanover, there's likely going to be a lot more traffic in that part of West Asheville. A lot of it right now uses Hanover. It would probably shift over to Michigan or some other street. So I do appreciate DOT looking at trying to maintain the Hanover connection, but also trying to make the Michigan connection a little safer. But that is, Michigan is a tight street.
Correct, and those improvements in Michigan are going to be funded by the I-2513 project, but the work itself isn't going to be included by supplemental agreement into HL 0003, which is the current project for Haywood Road. Really, the benefit to that is that we can go ahead and make those improvements and get Michigan and everything, the new signal installed, long before Hanover's ever cut off. So, ahead of the game is the goal. Bridge length over I-26 was the other topic of discussion, specifically really looking at just condensing this area as much as possible. There's a level of that was accomplished even in O&R. You see the kind of purple is the original plans for the project. So we have achieved some reduction. Really specifically, we did go back and evaluate the bridge length to try and shorten this. But the main issue that we ran up against and is kind of kept us where we are as far as the bridge length is the necessity to maintain traffic for I-26 and I-240. We did go a step further. We did evaluate and model some of temporary lane reductions on I-240 during construction, but they were significantly, queues and delays were significant and impacts to EMS and service time, as well as sort of long-term closure that would allow for a shorter bridge construction. So we are moving forward with the bridge length as designed and is covered by the I-26 the Status Committee recommendations as well. Further state coordination that's going to continue to be ongoing. One of the things that in many of those meetings, both with the Status Committee, architects, the coalition, MPO, elected officials, we kept always circling around and coming back to the need for future activation of retained right-of-way and disposal of surplus right-of-way. A lot of that has to do with again, making sure that the spaces that are left and created by this project are used in such a way that they line up with the vision of the city and the region. And the department is committed to do that, and those efforts will be ongoing. So on the east side of the French Broad River, where O&R removed that interchange, it really opens up a considerable amount of surplus right-of-way that will become available. That was an outcome of optimization refinement. And we are working even now with the city on agreements to get those in place so that the city can potentially take over Patton Avenue and some of that right-of-way and from a zoning perspective, work towards their ultimate goals. The city leads that effort, but we are working with them and supporting their goals there. Around the I-26 overpass area,
We are also working towards and are committed to utilizing municipal agreements with the city of Asheville to activate all the available spaces wherever is feasible along Patton, as well as under the bridge down to Smithville Creek. A lot of ideas were discussed in these groups, whether it be public art or examples locally now, or parking or skate parks or those kind of facilities that are inside of the right-of-way. There's a lot of space available there that could be used for those means, and the department is ready and willing to work with the city to that effect. And the goal there being that as we work towards design and we begin construction and ultimately get this project completed, that we continue to work with the community to hammer out the details so that we're leveraged into taking advantage of all those opportunities as quickly as we can. Any questions?
Thank you. I'm sorry, I'm trying to cut you off. Next, moving to NCDO revision updates, division 13.
Go ahead, Laura. Project updates. I'll try to move through these quickly. I've got just a few I want to mention. I-4700, I-26, currently the Blue Ridge Parkway Bridge is in a one-lane configuration with a signal. That is expected to be in through the end of the month, and at the conclusion of that, traffic on the new bridge, and then starting demo of the existing or old Blue Ridge Parkway Bridge in about 4 weeks. On US 19, the bridge is over Reams Creek. They're planning on setting girders for the second phase of the bridge there mid-October. They're planning on doing this at night to minimize impacts to traffic. Nathan already talked about the 2513 AA and AB, so we'll skip that. And the last thing I want to mention is HL0003, which is Haywood Road. And on that project, the contractor has communicated the plan to commence construction at a date later than first proposed. This will allow them to schedule and execute the construction in a more continuous way, hopefully then decreasing the time frames that motorists and pedestrians will be impacted while still completing the project by the completion date. As far as the project development updates, it's basically all the projects we've been seeing. Several highway safety projects coming up with some guardrail improvements and other things before long. Also in the construction that I forgot to mention, we do have a considerable number of what I'm calling lean bridges that are currently in design and in pre-construction, and hopefully be seeing some of those start construction in the field within the next few months.
Questions? Division 14.
Mr. Chair, if it's okay with the board, I'll refer everybody to the French Broad River MPO website for updates, and instead, just briefly, very quickly cover Division 14 submittals. Is that okay with those of us that are left? All right, and in Haywood County, Tristan already covered this. We agreed to submit the Delwood Road project since MPO is going to submit I-40, and also the Allens Creek, the bike ped project. And this isn't in the MPO, it's in Land of Sky RPO, but we may be submitting an intersection project for Cove Creek Road if we can't pull that into the interchange project that Land of Sky is submitting. In Henderson County, one intersection project at Howard Gap Road and Sugarloaf Road, and also pulled in North Allen Road. And then on the 64 corridor, one of the specific improvement types we can't do is lumping multiple intersections together. So we plan on submitting Etowah Park Road, these are all on the US 64 going from Laurel Park project out to the county line. I think it actually starts with South Rugby Road, Banner Farm Road, Brickyard Road, the Etowah Park Road, and Cummins Road. So that's 5 intersections. And for a bike ped submittal, we're looking at the Saluda grade, and Mr. McGrady is actually spearheading conversation as far as what section Henderson County would like for us to submit, so we appreciate that. That's all from the visual. Thank you. I know you're very busy in Stewart County, so thank you. Next is transportation planning branch.
I wasn't able to find any new statewide updates versus last month, so you can always refer back to my updates given then, but I'm happy to talk about the new interstate between Charlotte and Atlanta that doesn't go through South Carolina again. But I know you remember it from last month.
I do remember, but
It's in the air, the new air coordination corridor.
thank you, Dave. Next is the subcommittee workshop reports.
I won't go through all the subcommittee reports that's in your agenda packet. A few other updates to provide. There was a request for information from the U.S. House on the new transportation bill that's currently being drafted. NPO staff in coordination with the leadership team did submit comments on that. Also, there's been a ton of conferences, way too many. There was the National NPO conference in Providence, Rhode Island. It's actually still going on. I was there earlier this week to present on some of our previous work. There's the Bike Walk Summit in Hickory, where Tim Anderson presented with the city of Asheville on clean recovery efforts. There's also the DOT Transportation Summit. I only attended 2 of 3 of those conferences. Also, with DOT, we got news that Joey Hopkins is stepping down as Secretary of the Department, effective October 1st. Joey has been with the department for decades, and we very much appreciate his efforts. Daniel Johnson has been named as his successor. He will be stepping up on October 1st. A few other quick things. DEQ with North Carolina is starting their blueprint project, which looks at river basins for resiliency. They had their kickoff for the French Broad River Basin this morning, actually. The C9 work group isn't starting technically yet, but there are subcommittees looking at things for scoring and things like that. There's a locally administered project work group at NCDOT that is putting out a new handbook. We talk about this every few months to a year or so. Locally administered projects in North Carolina and across the country, their success rate is not where it should be. I think any effort to help educate project managers and help streamline the process are things that I think are really important to getting projects done in our region. Last but not least, we'll have a number of items for next month, including transit, Title VI, and an update from our TDM program on some of the work going on there. I'll leave it at that.
Can I just tell the school day, so October 8th is National Local School Day. We have 10 schools across the region that are participating. We'd love to see schools from Madison County and Henderson County. So if anyone knows any schools or contacts with the schools there that would be interested, send them my way.
Thank you. Any public comment? No. I will adjourn. Thank you.
Thank you, folks.